Today, we're joined by field hockey's senior captain, Shelagh Fluharty. I'll be honest, every time I've said your last name over the last 4 years, I've felt like I can't be saying it right because it sounds so properly Irish, like Fluharty. But I'm not saying it wrong, am I?
Well, so we say Fluharty, like
Okay.
we say Fluharty, but I studied abroad in Galway, Ireland last semester, and every single person trying to say my name there, it was really comical to me because like I every time I have like a new professor or a new teacher or anything, they always are like, I don't know how to say your name. I'm not sure who's next here, and like I'm following along alphabetically, so I know it's me. Like I very much am like, okay, Shayla.
Jeez.
And when I was over in Ireland, it was very similar, except people here will say like Sheila, and I say Shayla. And when I was in Ireland, they would also say Sheila, but with their accents, it sounded like very pretty and like exactly what my parents were, I think, envisioning for Shayla. So I would just let them call me Sheila, but in the way that they have their accents, it just sounded so nice. So I was like, go ahead. But here I'm like, no, Shayla is better. But and then Fluharty was it that never really comes up as often as the last name. So
I feel like a lot of Americans would just be sort of lazy and be like, oh, Fluharty.
yeah. it
Um,
is it is difficult. I always say that my first name is definitely the hardest part, and then people just kind of go through the last name just because they're like, well, that was a big hurdle for the first name. Let's just skim by the last name.
so thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I think that one of the coolest things that you bring to the table among a very small group of student athletes here is that you have a parent that went here. And I know you're excited to talk about that. So I sort of want to just start with that. I mean, we'll talk about majors and what you want to do after graduation, stuff like that. But we have that your mother, Jane Healy, class of '88, played field hockey and lacrosse here.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you talked about when we were exchanging emails, she's your favorite person in the world. And I mean, how much an influence did she have on you, first off, in coming to St. Mike's, but I guess also just in you playing those sports as well growing up?
So it's interesting because I originally my mom and my dad both had me and my two younger brothers. I have a younger sister too, but me and my two younger brothers all played deck hockey. Some people call it street hockey. And then from there, I was one of the only girls that was in that league. We were like, I was 7 years old. And eventually, when I got old enough for my elementary school, middle school, I got to play field hockey, which I was super excited about because I was like, it's all girls. Like, it's not just me and a bunch of my brothers and their friends. And my mom was actually an assistant coach for my sixth grade team and then became our head coach for our seventh and eighth grade years. And then from then, like, I knew she loved the sport. I knew she had played in college. I, at that point, didn't really like comprehend that it was like, I knew it was St. Mike's, but I didn't really knew what that meant and what exactly that entailed for her at the time. And then I got into high school and I was like, I like the sport even more and more. And I had also I did ski racing and lacrosse in high school too. And out of the three sports, I loved all of them, but field hockey was always number one for me. I ended up playing club. Both my mom and dad would be like, let's drive you to this tournament. Let's go to this tournament. Like, we're going to here, there, and like would come to every game. And then I told them, I want to play in college. Like, I want to play field hockey in college. And I was at the time too, I was like, maybe I want to play lacrosse. Depends on what school I go to. Maybe I want to do both. Who knows? Um, and then I was looking at colleges, and my mom was like, you have to look at St. Mike's. Like, that's where I went, and that's where I played. And I was like, yeah. I was like, that's your school, mom. Like, I don't want to go there. I want to make my own path. I want to go my own way. My dad's from Michigan, so he was like, you're not going to want to go to any of those schools. Like, I know you want to stay in New England. So, but mom was like, St. Mike's is in New England. Like, you can go there. And I was like, no, mom, I'm going to look elsewhere. So I looked at a bunch of other places, and she was like, you just have to tour it. Can we just tour it? Like, that way, like, my mom was like, at least for me, so I can go and see my old stomping grounds. And I was like, okay, mom, sure. Like, I'll appease you. We'll go, we'll look. And the drive up, gorgeous. Vermont, gorgeous. St. Mike's, gorgeous. Church Street, gorgeous. I was like, oh, this is getting really hard. This is getting really complicated. I wasn't supposed to like this. And the more that day went on that I came up for a visit was just, I was like, this is a really cool school. It's perfect size for me. Neuroscience was a new major, which is, I knew in high school I wanted to major in neuroscience, and most schools didn't have that as an option. I was in contact with Coach Carla Hessler, and I was like, well, these are like St. Mike's is checking off a lot of boxes for me. Like, and eventually I was like, you know, like it's still going to be your own school. It changed a lot since I went there. And it's like, I know. And then eventually it was just kind of like, well, it checked off too many boxes for me to not say yes to St. Mike's and come here, which it's awesome because my mom now came up to all of our home games and would see me play at a lot of away games. And every time she came up, she'd be like, it makes me so happy to be back here, which is just awesome to like hear and know that she wasn't just coming up. One, I knew she was coming up to support me, but two, like it was meaningful to her too, as her college.
Was your I know I have friends who went here. I also went here. I'm a class of '04. And so I have a lot of friends who are St. Mike's couples, and that there are a lot of St. Mike's couples out there. And they have kids who are basically indoctrinated with St. Mike's, St. Mike's, you're going to go to St. Mike's in 21 years, or not 21 years, but 17 or 18 years, and wearing a little baby onesie of class of 2035 or something like that. I mean, did you have that kind of, was it a St. Mike's household? Had you heard about St. Mike's throughout growing up?
Not really. There was only one instance. I think my mom came up for like an alumni weekend one time, and she brought us up with her. I was really young. I maybe was like 5 or 6 years old. So I don't really have much of a memory of it, but I remember we went to the campus store and I got a crew neck that was gray and it said SMC. At the time, I had no idea what SMC stood for, what it was or anything, but I loved the sweatshirt. I wore it until I physically grew out of it. And my younger sister, who's 12 now, when she was that age, she was wearing that sweatshirt too. And it wasn't like, you're gonna go to St. Mike's. It was just like, it's a cool sweatshirt. It's where mom went to school. Like, so that was probably the only part of it. My parents are very, very good at you do what you want, and we'll help guide you in specific directions and stuff like that. But they don't pressure us into, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. It's like, if you want to do that, sure, we'll support you in that, which is really awesome.
It would be really cool if you ended up digging up a photo of you from, I guess that would be late 90s. Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s of you in that sweatshirt.
Yeah, probably early 2000s. I would have to go, I definitely have to go digging for that now.
Yeah. I was going to ask about if there are any professors that your mother had back then, but actually, even as I'm thinking about it, I mean, your two assistant coaches, Coach Jim Lasker-Zuski, he's in his 35th year. He was in school with your mother. And was also an assistant coach at the time. And then, of course, Ann Noon Adams, who she was the head coach for 13 years. She was your mother's head coach. Now she's an assistant coach for you. Have you ever talked with Ski or Ann about everything coming full circle?
Yeah, so actually it was pretty cool. When I was coming to visit, my mom was like, don't be scared to reach out. Like, the two assistant coaches, like, were coaches when I was there. Like, it'll be a nice icebreaker. And it was a great icebreaker. And it was really cool to be like, well, like, you guys actually, like, you coached my mom. Like here I am, like, basically a semi-identical version of her. And now they get to coach me, which is just awesome. And it would be cool icebreakers throughout the years, like first day of preseason. Sometimes it'd be like, oh, and actually both assistant coaches coached my mom here, which was awesome. An awesome icebreaker, definitely. And it was pretty cool talking with them. Like, the full circle, like you talked about, is just really, really cool to see, because it doesn't happen that often.
No. Actually, that's a perfect segue because I sort of want to list off, we have four other student athletes here whose parents were student athletes as well. Men's lacrosse junior Brian Charlton and golf first year Aiden Stewart, both of their fathers swam here.
Mhm.
Women's cross country first year Ella DiBernardo, her father ran cross country as well. And then Alpine junior Christian Gallagher, his father played soccer. But then even you were teammates with Jenna DeShane.
Yeah.
Jenna was a class of 18. Her sister Megan was a class of 16. Their mother Patty Porter DeShane, class of 89. She also played with your mother. Yeah.
That was pretty crazy, and that was another cool icebreaker. Coming in freshman year, obviously it can be kind of terrifying as a freshman coming in, but in having a senior have that same kind of like commonality with me was pretty cool, and a nice little like connection that we had. And even though there can be a little lack of connection between like seniors and first years because you're so far apart in the years of college, but that was pretty cool.
You saw the photo. I dug up those photos from the 1988 yearbook of your mother. What do you think of the style back then? I was expecting like bigger hair.
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny. In the yearbook photos that my mom had showed me of her in high school, she also didn't have very big hair. I was looking through and I'm like, Mom, everyone else around you like has like bigger poofy hair. And I'm like, you don't. And she told me that that's because of one of her older brothers who unfortunately has passed away, but he would be like, Jane, you're not gonna do the big poofy hair, like keep your hair like natural, like make it like just nice. It's already like pretty straight and everything. And she's like, honestly, I'm pretty glad he told me to do that. I'm pretty glad I listened to it, which is just it's funny to me. And her style has pretty much stayed pretty similar, which I guess is very youthful of her. So that's pretty awesome.
You mentioned on the day we did photos for your team that you and Hannah Wilmot have now played together for 10 years.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you guys went to high school together, correct? Um,
So
yeah.
I went to St. Bernard's Elementary School, which is a preschool through eighth grade. So I was there for a full 10 years. And during in my seventh grade year, Hannah joined in to our class. So she started playing field hockey right off the bat too with us. So from seventh grade until now, Hannah and I have been teammates. And then we both went to St. Bernard's High School, teammates again. And we both were on the same club team, WCU, which is Worcester County United Field Hockey. So we were teammates there for club as well. And then we both decided to come to St. Mike's individually. But it was pretty cool to like have that connection with someone from home, and especially the first year, like we've talked about, is can be a little difficult. So knowing that someone else that you already know is here was pretty nice, and it's pretty cool to see each other's like growth through those 10 years, because that's pretty long time for us who are only 21.
I should point out Hannah Wilmot also is one of the seniors on the field hockey team, one of your goalkeepers. Were you always an attacking player, or were you ever back, like right in front of her, and you guys are playing in the same half of the field?
So I was always either a midfield or a forward. It's kind of funny because my high school career in field hockey and my college career in field hockey both kind of resemble themselves, where like freshman year I was more of just like a forward attacking. Sophomore year kind of transitioned to both a forward and a midfield, and then junior year basically strictly midfield, and then senior year probably, if we were to have a season, would have been just midfield again. And in that midfield I have been able to play like closer to Hannah. And I remember in high school a lot, I would take a lot of 16-yard hits, which is when we get to take the ball back out after the ball goes off the end line or a foul happens in the circle or something. And Hannah would be like, oh, here's the ball, Shay. And I'm like, thanks, Hannah. And because in high school, you don't have ball boys or ball girls.
Right.
So there would be a lot of communication between the two of us on the field, which was awesome. And then in college, like if Hannah's saying something on the field, I know exactly what she's saying. Like I've heard that voice before. I know what she's saying. I can listen to her because that voice I've just heard for so long. So
I'd be sort of remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about what you know of the program's history, because this is the 20th anniversary of the field hockey program making NCAAs, the first women's program at St. Mike's to make an NCAA tournament. Even your mom was so close to being on the first women's team we've had here to win a postseason tournament. The field hockey team of '88 won the ECAC tournament back when that was the only tournament they could really play in. There was no NCAA tournament for D2 field hockey. There was no NE10 field hockey at the time. Has your mom told you anything about, even just the apparel that they had back then, or traveling on school buses or versus a Premier? I don't really know what they had, or having one pair of shoes, or the sticks, or or how the game has changed over 30 years.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have a lot of my mom's hand-me-downs from college. I have a crew neck that says St. Mike's Field Hockey, and I have one that says St. Mike's Lacrosse, which are really cool. They say apparently they're very retro. Um, and I also have a varsity jacket from her. It's purple. It's got like the gold collar, and it says like St. Mike's Varsity. It doesn't say the sport. She said that all the student athletes had gotten that year, which is really cool. I actually have worn it a couple of times, and people are always like, "Wow, where'd you get that?" And like, actually, it was my mom's. Like, it's limited edition. So that's pretty cool in that fact. And she has showed me, like, she still has her old field hockey stick from college, which is completely wooden, very different from the composite stick that I have now. And she's like, and this lasted me for I don't know how many years, she said. And it's like, mine, like, field hockey sticks now, like, you get chips or whatever on them, you grow out of them in a couple of years. And so she's like, just the difference in looking at your stick from my stick is just like, it's very different. So the sport has definitely changed a lot. And I remember growing up, it would change, like the rules would change relatively like every couple of years. We've had differences in like restarts and stuff like that, that I even just like grew up going through different changes. So I can't even imagine what exactly the game was like when my mom actually played, but she doesn't talk about it too much because I think she prefers how it's played now. So she focuses more on that, which is nice to like be able to talk to her about the game, because I'm like, you're an outside perspective, you get to watch the game and see how it is, and I know you've played it before, and I know you've watched it for years. So that's pretty cool. As far as anything else, she doesn't really talk too much about the like history of like records and stuff, but I do know from Coach Carla that we call ourselves Team 46. So I know we're the 46th field hockey team here on campus, which I thought was pretty awesome, considering that this is also the 50th year of Women at St. Mike's. So for having 46 teams, once women came to the school or allowed in, it was only 4 years after that they started a field hockey team, which I thought was pretty cool, that there wasn't too much of a lag time before actually getting a field hockey program. And we also have our own little private field hockey Facebook page that Carlo posts updates to, and all the alumni can like share their thoughts and stuff. So Carlo will post a photo and be like, this is from the game, like the semifinal game or whatever. And those players are like jumping in the chat saying like, oh, like, I can't remember what exact part of this game was. I remember this. So it's like really cool to like learn about that history and see the excitement that those women have from a part of their past.
I know that Coach Hessler is very proud of that. She was the head coach here. She's been the head coach here for 23 years. It's
22. I thought it was 22 this year.
It might well be, because 99. Yeah, that's right. 99. Her second year, they made NCAAs. 2001 made NCAAs again. Yeah, I mean the success from Anne continuing on through Carla has been incredible. And actually, it's funny because as you're talking about the changes to the sport just in the last couple of years, I hadn't really thought of it that way. But of course, little tweaks do continue changing the sport. And I don't know if you have children someday, or you're a coach and you're talking to the kids in 2040 and they're used to the sport having always been 4 quarters with 2 10-minute overtimes. It, I mean, you can say, yeah, I remember back when it was 35-minute halves. And I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, things like that. And you have played on turf. Have you ever played on grass? Because man, watching field hockey on grass is different.
Yes, my high school only had grass and we basically only played other teams on grass. So my only like my only way of getting to play turf was basically through club, and that was why club was such an important thing, because you're not going to play on grass in college no matter what division you are. So you need to have like, it is such a different game. So you need to have that experience on turf because it's so much faster. You can do so many different skills and everything. Whereas when we were on grass, it was a much slower game. Passing was a little bit more difficult because you had to use a lot more power, just because of like, sometimes it would be like, oh, our grass didn't get mowed today. So like now it's even thicker. And it's like, sometimes you'd be like, where's the ball? We can't see it because the grass is covering it. Which is definitely a very, very different game than what we play now. And even when we go and scrimmage like UVM on their AstroTurf, even from field turf to AstroTurf, it is like night and day. The speed and the different like techniques you use on each surface really change.
You would have enjoyed the surface that the team played on in the early 2000s. Then it was grass. It's that
Yeah.
the secondary field that you guys, I think, probably practice on now and then, but perfectly manicured, perfect grass, and probably the best grass field in the region at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked a little about neuroscience and wanting to come here for neuroscience, and I'm curious what you're in high school and you know, okay, neuroscience is what I want to do in college. Do you then also have an idea of here's really what my future I want my professional life to look like after college?
Mm-hmm.
What were you thinking as a high school student about here's what I want to do in the future? And is that the same?
In high school, I did not know what I wanted to do after college. I knew that the brain really interests me and that there was still a lot more to learn about it compared to other sciences. So I was like, it would be really cool to like study something that has like a bigger like promise in the future, where a lot isn't known, so there can be so much more to learn about it. And so I was like, well, the brain is just really, really intricate. So it's super interesting to me. I have family who have had brain disorders like Alzheimer's before, which is very fascinating to me. Obviously, do not wish that upon anyone, but the more that research comes out, it's more interesting for me to learn. And it's actually what my senior thesis will be on, as the Alzheimer's and the sense of self, and losing that sense of self and your memory and stuff like that. Which is just super interesting to me. And in high school, I had no idea what I would want to do after college. Now, going through college, learning more, having a summer internship, working in a lab, which was awesome. We did cellular pathways of brain tumors, and I did that at UMass Medical Center, which was even cooler that it was like, it was close to home for me that summer. And the PI, who's the head of the lab, actually is a St. Mike's grad. So that was pretty cool. Connections are always everything.
We're everywhere. St. Mike's grads are everywhere. It's incredible.
Everywhere, everywhere. And after that summer, I was like, research is so cool. Like, that's what I want to do. And I looked into it more, and I'm hoping that someday I can get my PhD in neuroscience, doing some kind of research on basically anything in the brain, especially the disorders and neural networking and stuff like that.
It's incredible. Um, I realize, a lot of the student athletes we've spoken with this semester have also been involved, like heavily involved on campus.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about being involved with SAAC and Hope Happens Here, and just why you got involved with those two, and why you have continued on as a senior to be involved.
Yeah, so I actually got involved with SAAC my second semester of sophomore year. I was asked by two seniors, Maddie DeBecky and Katie Leonard, who were both on SAAC at the time. They asked me if I wanted to join, told me a little bit what it was about, and they said that they thought I would be a good fit for it. So of course I was honored, especially coming from those two seniors. And I said, yeah, sure. So I started going to some of the meetings and would have some like subcommittees and stuff. And I would like be like, yeah, sure, I'll join that. And Shannon, the advisor for us, would be like, oh, thanks for stepping up, Shayla. And I was like, oh, like it just seemed interesting. So it kept kind of going from there. And then ended up this year, I'm now secretary of SAAC, which has been really cool, getting to work closely with the e-board and on different topics, and working closely with Shannon too, has all been awesome. And I realized that I was like, oh, like I have to take a lot of notes. And that's another thing where I was like, secretary stems back to my mom. She's been a secretary for like all of our parent meetings in elementary school for all of my siblings. So I was like, I guess it's another thing I just get from my mom, which I'll credit her for. And then Hope Happens Here, I remember so I'm now a high school coordinator for Hope Happens Here. So I'm on the e-board. And when I was applying, one of the questions was like, what has been your previous involvement in Hope Happens Here? And I remember writing that I've been kind of a silent supporter of Hope Happens Here. I've always known exactly what it was about and stuff. And as someone who has struggled with my own mental health for a really, really long time, I wasn't fully prepared my freshman, sophomore, even into junior year to jump into a lot of what Hope Happens Here was about. And that was just partly because I wasn't confident enough in my own mental health to go and advocate about it. And then when it came, like all of this COVID stuff started happening, and I was like, more and more and more, I was like, I feel like it's just more important for more people to speak out about their mental health and issues of that sort. So then I applied for that high school coordinator job, which I also really wanted because my own high school is primarily student athletes. I think it's like 85 to 90% of the school, because it's a very small school, plays a sport. And that's when I first started experiencing a lot of anxiety and some depression was in high school. So I wanted that opportunity to like extend that conversation even younger than just college athletes. So that's been pretty cool to reach out to some schools in Vermont and talk with some of them about that.
It's commendable. It's through the current student athletes, obviously, that you guys keep this going. But
Mhm.
it started a few years ago, but the fact that it's still going strong is really cool to see.
Yeah, it's really cool too, because I remember before I even came to St. Mike's, I was already the summer going into my freshman year. Hannah Wilman and I, we both got emails about the two co-founders of Hope Happens Here throwing the first pitch at a Red Sox game.
Yeah.
And Hannah and I were like, that'd be so cool. Like they're both St. Mike's like students. I think they might have just graduated that year or something.
Yep.
And I was like, that'd be so cool. And we brought both of our moms because we got to bring one person with us, and we watched them throw the first pitch. And that was like my first introduction to Hope Happens Here, which was pretty awesome considering like I wasn't even a student here yet. And I was watching recent alumni like throw the first pitch at a Red Sox game, which was pretty cool.
Right in your not hometown, but half hour, 45 minutes or so.
About an hour.
Okay.
About an hour out.
With no traffic, maybe less, but it's
Yeah.
area. There's always traffic.
Yeah, always traffic in Boston.
So, like I told you off camera before, I feel like I've wanted to do this a top 10, or not a top 10, but 10 questions, and I I think I feel like it's something that other people do. They ask a little more fun little questions here, but and I'll be totally frank. If this doesn't work, it's not your fault. It's my fault. Um, but yeah, they'll get progressively more challenging. But
Okay.
you ready for this? And then, okay. All right, Shay, what is your favorite color?
Probably say yellow.
Okay. Question 2. What is your favorite movie?
Either The Grinch or Mrs. Doubtfire.
Ooh, That's not what I expected. I mean, both of those are throwbacks, but especially Mrs. Doubtfire. That's
Mrs. Doubtfire is my favorite since I was a young child.
hello. Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
so glad you know it.
yeah. It's from my childhood. Um, Number three, who is your favorite musician
Ooh,
or a genre, if you prefer?
I'd probably say Jack Johnson.
Okay. Okay. Number four, what is the first thing you remember about preseason as a first year? And where would you grade yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 in terms of how absolutely terrified you were?
All I remember from preseason freshman year was crying a lot because I was so homesick. I was living on a floor alone. There was no one else on my floor, and I was used to having 5 other people in my house.
Yeah.
Um, and I was definitely like overly 10 terrified. But it does get better. For any first year watching, it does get so much better, and it is worth it. But it can be absolutely terrifying, especially in the first couple of days.
I feel absolutely horrible having asked you that question now. We will revise this if we do this again with someone else. Question number five. Who's the funniest teammate that you've had while you've been at St. Mike's?
Ooh, probably Nell Cristione. Probably. I
That
feel
makes,
like that was an easy one.
that makes sense. I don't think she would knock me too much if I said that a lot of photos we have of her playing are of her falling down, or she's on the sideline. She's the only one on the sideline who realizes the camera is trained on them, and she's smiling from
Yeah,
200 yards away. It's incredible.
she's the best human.
Number six. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Told you to.
Um, Probably to smile more.
Okay. Okay. Um, Number seven. Where's the first and during non-COVID times, where is the first place that you like to go when you go back home on a vacation? And not like in your house, in your room, but somewhere in town. Where do you go first?
Huh. Well, we recently moved. I previously would have said to my camp, which was a little lake house, but my parents built a house there, so that now that's where we live. So just like on the beach on our lake house.
Okay. That sounds very peaceful.
Very peaceful.
Number eight. What is your favorite moment so far of your St. Michael's field hockey career?
Huh. I would probably say I have 2 memories that come to mind. One was we had a game. I think it was my sophomore year. Yeah, it was my sophomore year. We had a stroke called, and I was like, oh gosh, like right before the game, like coach was like, take a stroke, like just practice your stroke. And I was like, okay, practice my stroke. And then during the game, we get a stroke call, and she's like, Shay, like you gotta go take the stroke. And I was like, oh my gosh, which was kind of terrifying because it's just you and the goalie. There's no one else to watch except for you and the goalie. And I ended up scoring on that stroke, which was like, oh, I practiced so many times. To actually see it work like in a game was so cool. And then the second memory was our Hope Happens Here game last year, getting the biggest hugs, specifically Claire Scherf, and then everyone else came in. Biggest hug, we scored on a corner, and it was just like so exciting. And there were so many people at the game because it was our Hope Happens Here game, and they were like grilling out and stuff. And it was just like the big embrace with the whole entire team was just so awesome.
Was that the game against New Haven?
I think so.
I think they also had Hope Happens Here shirts on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was nice to see both teams. I think they have a chapter, so both teams
Yeah.
really embracing that cause.
Yeah. And in a lot of locker rooms when we have away games, some of them will have like signs up that are like laminated that'll like say like our Hope Happens Here chapter, like you're not alone and stuff. And it's really cool to see it like at other schools because it did originate here, so obviously it is a big part of athletics here, but seeing it being a part of like other colleges and college student athletes is just really, really cool to see.
All right, question number 9. What is one word that you would use to describe yourself?
Ooh, spontaneous.
That actually works very well for having to come up with something off the cuff there, so well done. And
Thank
the
you.
final question number 10. And I'll sort of preface this with, I played baseball growing up, and the ultimate would be to, you come up in the bottom of the ninth inning and you get a hit to win the game, walk off hit, and everybody celebrates with you. What is sort of that golden moment in field hockey? And can you set up like what the golden moment in field hockey would be, your last college field hockey game, and it's something awesome that you do? What does that look like? And that's how your career ends.
Um, so I guess my ideal end to my field hockey career would be a pretty like evenly matched game, not a blowout or anything like that, um, and really working as a full team unit and getting that last goal in, I would say probably the last like, I'd give it like last like 5 minutes, just so it's not like a buzzer beater or anything. Those get me a little too anxious. But in the last 5 minutes, like as a team scoring goal, ideally off of a corner, I feel like is the most exciting goals. Would be really awesome. Of course, I can't create the future, but that would be a really, really cool end a senior year. And having that kind of a game where you just at the end, like you go and get your goalie and everyone's just all smiles.
It's interesting that those are the questions. It's interesting that you didn't say, oh, obviously the end of the second overtime, I score and everybody comes and hugs me. That's I think that's very revealing that that's not what you said. That's a good teammate right there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that went relatively well with those 10 questions. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll do that again, hopefully, with someone else.
Yeah, they were very thought provoking. I was like, what's going to come to my mind first?
Good. Well, again, spontaneous. That
Yeah.
went well. That was good. And yellow, of course. Purple and gold. Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join me and talk about your mother and your experience growing up with field hockey and coming to St. Mike's and what that's been like for you.
Yeah, it's been awesome.